Good morning. Oh, there's the camera. Haha. Hi there. Good morning. It's 7:08 a.m. On what day? Thursday, October 12th, 2017. I'm Christiana Ellis, and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. I am moving slow this morning. Yes. Had a couple nights in a row. I think so. Last night I was up past standard bedtime, doing so many levels, but it was a great episode. I'm very happy with how that session went, and but because of the improv show Tuesday night, which also had me out late, and then the Monday, I think I just kind of randomly stayed up too late without any particular good reason for it. Um, eh, Dragging a little bit. I'm already recording this later than I usually would at this point in the morning. I really ought to be getting ready for work, so I'm gonna have to just go ahead and record this first, and then get to that. So I've been continuing to listen to the audiobook of the Southern Reach trilogy, which starts with Annihilation and then is Authority and Acceptance. And it's interesting. I'm now early in the third book as I've been making my way through this trilogy, and I definitely find that it's what my brain wants to listen to. So that's always a good sign, right? I find myself compelled to continue that as opposed to switching away from it and listening to a podcast or something like that. So I definitely recommend it. It's super weird. I saw a short video that was talking about the movie trailer, describe it as H.P. Lovecraft meets Arrival, and I think that's actually a very, very good description of how it feels. And I'm not really even going to get into the story. This is not a review per se, except that I like it. But one of the things that I was kind of led to expect from a couple of different sources was that maybe the first book was really interesting, but then the second and third book were maybe disappointing. So far, I'll say that I was not disappointed with book two, but I can see why that might be. So, what I actually want to talk about today a little bit more is how a lot of science fiction, and especially when you start veering into maybe sci-fi horror, which I think this maybe qualifies as, um, you you have a problem in a lot of works where it's easy to ask a cool, scary question, and much, much harder to deliver a cool, scary answer. So when you have a situation where there's some really cool, strange mystery, and it makes our human brains want to figure out the mystery. Um, but then the problem is the cooler and stranger the mystery question you've asked in this story, the more difficult it's likely to be to come up with an answer that's going to make any kind of sense. And so you will generally end up teetering on the balance between providing an answer that may be unsatisfactory or providing no answer at all and leaving people frustrated that the mystery doesn't get solved. And that's a challenge. There's a lot of stuff out there that doesn't resolve that very well. And it's definitely something I can, as a storyteller, I can sympathize that's it's tricky because we want to tell those kinds of stories. They appeal to us, but they're hard. They're difficult to tell. So, having not read all the way through book three, I can't necessarily conclude how this trilogy manages it, except that I am aware of other people having been unsatisfied with it. But I don't know. I think it's at the same time having enjoyed the conclusion of some shows in the past that I know other people didn't like. I can draw some conclusions that what people didn't like about the ending of this may not bother me. Because, for example, when we talk about the endings of, say, Lost or Battlestar Galactica, they very much fell into the category of this thing that I was talking about, where you have this cool question: what is going on with this island? And in Battlestar Galactica, what's the deal with the final five Cylons? And the Cylons have a plan. What is it? And what's really going on with all of this Lords of Kobol stuff? But because both of those shows, I think, were kind of had their hands, but just by virtue of having everything been so complicated leading up to that, there was probably no coherent answer that was ever going to explain all of it. And so they both kind of chose the keeping it mysterious, resolving some elements of it, but mostly leaving it ambiguous. A lot of people didn't like that, and I think that that's a fair response to want those types of stories to end that way. But at least for me, in those cases, I was invested enough in the characters that my primary want for the ends of those stories was to understand what was happening to those characters and have their arcs resolved. And I felt that by and large, I was happy with that piece of those stories. And so I liked the endings, even as I can understand what there is to dislike about it for other people. And so I wonder if the Southern Reach trilogy will be the same for me. Perhaps. On a tangential note, the trailer for the Annihilation movie, which is coming out soon, which is what got me thinking about reading the books, which I had heard about but hadn't read yet. It looks like the story is very different. I mean, it's very difficult to track more than about a third of the trailer shots to actual events from the book. But that said, because of the Lovecrafty elements in this story, there's a lot of it that it would be really very difficult to directly adapt to film. And so as a result, I have no doubt that they have to change a lot of the plot, even if the general situation is the same. And to take the alien mystery of this place, this Area X, and change it more into a undescribable, in like you can't do undescribable in a movie because like if it's going to be a special effect, someone has to make it. It's going to have to be described at some point, right? But you can make it weird, and that seems to be the direction they're going. And I don't know. I will have to say it's a weird story to adapt, but the guy who wrote Ex Machina is on it, so maybe. In any event, I've got to finish getting ready for work, so I will talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.